another, I can't even say a sip. Let me go ahead and take another taste of my lentil soup. Lentil soup for the soul. I thought I went live on YouTube. My bad. Now I'm live on YouTube. So, Israelite man who's on YouTube, welcome. All right, boom. So we are on YouTube, and the link is going to be in the box. And so we're going to be talking about signs, symptoms, and solutions for domestic violence. I kind of preface, so let me recap some of the things that we may be exposed to, or we may think that domestic violence is, or verbal abuse is loud and belligerent. That's one aspect of verbal abuse. And another kind would be soft and manipulative. Remember, I spoke about those control dramas the other day. So this kind of interconnects with those control dramas. But for the sake of ease, I'm going to kind of just read off of this article, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion. So this particular article was written by liveabout.com. How can someone identify and respond to verbal abuse? Because it's one thing to intellectually know that you're in an abusive relationship, and there's another thing when you're actually moving through it and actually in real time choosing the right things to say and not to say, depend on the type of abuse you may be in. So the article says, let me take a little water here. Verbal abuse is difficult to identify and regrettably can be a common type of abuse in some marriages. Now they say marriages, it could be friendships, relationships among siblings, amongst co-workers, in any environment that you have a relationship, this can exist, okay? Not all words that are meant to hurt are, quote, ugly words, end quote. A master at verbal abuse can damage your self-esteem while at the same time appear to care deeply for you. Mark that part, because this is where we begin to get confused with the person's actions, because it may be followed by, I really love you, I really wish the best for you. And, but before I get to that point, I'm going to just smash you to smithereens, right? It says the use of words to punish is a very covert attempt to control. And regardless of how loving your spouse, I'm going to say your spouse, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your mama, your daddy, your coworker, your boss, whoever it is, may appear to be, verbal abuse is wrong and can be as harmful as physical abuse. And if we're talking about the soul and we're talking about things that transmit energy, welcome everybody who just joined us. We're talking about things that transmit energy. Words are vibration and they have power and they transmit energy. Okay, so when it says that a physical wound, somebody who may physically be abused, that is harmful. But that wound may heal. But what doesn't heal oftentimes, or what is slower to heal, is that emotional abuse, right? That trust level, that trust factor for the individual who may have hurt you, even long after the scars have gone. It says, physical abuse is easily identified, like, why do you have on those dark glasses? What happened to your lip? What's that bruise from? You could possibly pick up on physical abuse more easily. There is no doubt once you have been hit that you have been physically abused. But you don't second guess yourself, because the bruises and scars are visible and the proof that the abuse have taken place. Like, you've seen the movies or somebody, or even, What's Love Got to Do with It with Tina Turner. It's kind of like that first time that individual tries to control, because that's what abuse is. It's trying, like I said, to usurp the power of the individual so you can control them in the direction you want them to go. And that first hit, it'd be like, the person be like, did you just, like, even it's a shock, like, did you just hit me? You see what I'm saying? And so even though that's the case and you initially hit with that shock, you do realize that somebody used physical force on you. But verbal abuse is different. The damage is neutral. It's internal. There are no physical bruises, and they said that already. You may have a wounded self-esteem. You may have a wounded spirit, whatever the case may be. Okay? And so we're looking and contrasting verbal, which will also be this kind of emotional abuse and manipulation that takes place in, like I said, it takes place in intimate partner relationships. It also takes place in community settings. You know what I'm saying? It takes place in all of these type of things. Why is this very important? Because people who don't realize or know the signs and symptoms of verbal abuse will normalize this behavior. And when someone comes along and says, hey, this behavior is not normal, then everybody looks at the person like, what are you talking about? Because sometimes we have, like I said, we haven't been done the internal work, so we make excuses for the behavior, like the person really loves us, they're only looking out for our best interest, and we also haven't built up in some spaces enough strength, internal fortitude to have a higher self-esteem to demand your respect. And the bad thing about that is when people see that you haven't worked to that point and that individual is an abuser, they will exploit that weakness in you. So this list here, and if I have anything to add to the list, I will. It's called being called names by your spouse. It says spouse, I will say spouse, teacher, leader, parents, co-workers, whomever, wherever. This name calling thing is a definite sign of verbal abuse. A negative form of name calling is unacceptable. You feel that it is a put down, then it most likely is. There are names that are obvious and without question abusive. Then there are covert and veiled attempts to put the individual down that are harder to identify. Verbal abusers love to use constructive criticism to beat a spouse down. Keep saying spouse, okay? If the person is constantly criticizing you for your own good, be careful. This is the most insidious form of verbal abuse. So the person is saying, oh, I love you, and this is why I'm saying it to you. Like, I remember years ago when I didn't have, because it wasn't always that I was aware of what was actually happening. But I don't like a whole lot of, if I could just alleviate the problem where the person thinks they're controlling you, but if you can just be like, okay, since you say this is the problem, then hey. And so I experienced where something, you don't know that somebody's jealous, say, of your hair. And so you have a conversation like, well, your hair is so thick, or your hair is so fluffy, or your hair is getting in the way, and you would look better if you didn't have your hair. And this is a covert, thinly veiled way for the individual to try to mold you to what they want you to be. You understand what I'm saying? So, or whatever it may be for that individual, you would be better if. And it's not in the sense of let me help you to get there, because eventually when you do what the person says would make you better, you still are not better. This is how you know the person is manipulating you with their words, right? Using words to sim. So that's being called names, name calling. I recently experienced that. I shared about it. It was interesting. It didn't penetrate because I understood and was aware of it. But I think the people in the listening audience and many of us around were so used to certain type of behaviors that we weren't willing, many were willing. I'm not even going to say that. Many were willing to say, you know what, that's wrong. But there were some who were saying, well, I don't see nothing wrong. You know what I'm saying? It's like when old boy was saying, I don't see nothing wrong. You don't see nothing wrong with calling people out their name, where there's plenty of things wrong with that, okay? Using words to shame. Critical, sarcastic, mocking words meant to put you down, either alone, in front of people. These may be comments about the way you dress. I just spoke about that. Talk, your intelligence, any comment to make you feel inferior and ashamed is what the abuser is attempting. So for instance, you have a different way of speaking, or you have a different accent. Oh, you talk so white, or you talk so proper, or you talk so ghetto. Maybe it is it's a thin line, because if we become hypersensitive to every critique, that means we can never be corrected and we can never be reproved. But we have to learn the difference between the critique and abuse. And I guess that's the kind of conversation I wanted to bring up today, to see if we can look at what the difference is between critique and abuse. Okay. Yelling, swearing, and screaming. This is called the walking on eggshells syndrome, because you're living with someone who goes verbally ballistic for every little cause. Did one of your kids leave a toy in the middle of the floor? Get ready for World War III. And accusations of what a bad mother you are and how inept you are at keeping the house clean. So they're talking about a spouse in this relationship, but it can definitely be where frustrations get high and tempers flare, and the person knows that if you come and you see something, they're like physically feeling sick and physically shaken by your presence. Then you know that those individuals, welcome to those who just joined us, you are abusive to those individuals, because they can't speak up, they have to mince words, they can't say what it is they mean because they're afraid of the lashing that they're going to receive. Using threats to intimidate. No threat should be given lightly, even if your fill in the blank, tells you they're only joking, especially if it causes you to change behavior or feel on guard in a relationship. The verbal abuser wants to cause feelings of fear in you. Remember, we talked about this being about control. So if the individual can instill this fear, then they can control you. Okay. And this is why, the drama controls and the things in which people manipulate you. And again, it doesn't only come in one form. It's overt and covert, depending on the personality of the person you're dealing with. The verbal abuser wants to cause feelings of fear. Okay, boom. Blaming the victim. It's all your fault. You made me do it. Like you've seen it in the movies. When I was young, I used to like to watch a lot of Lifetime. I don't know why. But when I used to watch a lot of Lifetime with them psycho people, and the dude is psycho, right? And he's running down the girl, he's stalking her in the bush, and then he runs up on her. And then all of a sudden it's like, look what you made me do to you. And you're like, I made you do this to me? And what happens is oftentimes the person internalizes it and actually begins to think that you made them do it to you. And so once again, I see on YouTube, Israelite man says he doesn't have a wife. It doesn't only take place in intimate partner relationships. You can have verbal abuse with friends. You can have verbal abuse. That's what they call toxic friendship. You can have verbal abuse with brothers. You can have verbal abuse with men who hang out. And that man may be verbally abused by another man. It happens, right? So we have blaming the victim. Like, look what you made me do. So the person takes no personal responsibility for the part they play in what the outcome is. 6, your feelings are dismissed. So, get out of here. What you crying for? I didn't really do anything to you. So if you come to try and express yourself to the individual, you're quickly dismissed because you really, and the long and short of it, the individual, like you're not really worth it. If they thought you were really worth it, then they wouldn't be trying to manipulate you in the way in which they are, and they wouldn't be verbally abusing you. Okay? Or we can turn it around if you're the verbal abuser, because sometimes the individual doesn't know that they're a verbal abuser because they have been used to verbal abuse for so long, and they may identify with the person who's doing the abusing. Okay? And so they may think this is the way for me to get what I want. Okay? We spoke about, like I said, this is in connection to the conversation we had the other day. You often wonder why you feel so bad. You got to charge your battery? No problem, Miss Michelle. You often why you feel so bad. So after engaging with this individual, after having a discussion, after an interaction, you feel like that energetic vampire has just sucked all of your energy. And the reality is because they have. When you press the energy out of someone, when you forcibly extract someone's energy, it's like when they take too much blood from you, you feel weak and they tell you got to go eat because somebody's actually taking your life force from you forcibly or not forcibly. They may be coercing it out of you. So it says you bury your feelings, walk on eggshells, and work so hard at keeping the peace that every day becomes an emotional chore, right? Because you don't want to upset the boogeyman. You feel depressed and have been wondered if you are crazy. You are turning your stress inward. That depends on if the person it really depends on the personality of the person who's also being abused. Because some may turn it inward, or some may be passive aggressive, where they're turning it in, and then they'll look to do the same thing to somebody who's lower than them on rank, right? So, but again, this form of verbal abuse is common at the end of marriage. So after the person can no longer get what they desire from you, they become aloof, they become indifferent, they separate themselves from you, and you may experience this. Sorry. If your spouse doesn't want a divorce, they will say whatever it takes to play on your emotions to get you to stay in the marriage. And that oftentimes is the most dangerous part, because you will compromise even more of yourself to think that you're saving the whole all the time, not knowing that you did not negotiate the respect that you needed. So anything that comes here after, the person is like, well, this is what you negotiated for. This is how I was when you wanted to stay. And they kind of keep you at that level, which is kind of dangerous. It says, all in an attempt to get you to comply with their desires. Same thing, regardless of what is best for you as an individual. So you must compromise, sacrifice yourself, your integrity, your self-worth for the whole. At the same time, the whole is not doing the same for the person. So you will have one person complying with everything and then the other person dictating what is normal, right? So basically you're withering away, okay? Your self-esteem, no, manipulating your actions, okay? The persistent and intense use of threatening words to get you to do something or act in a certain way. If you don't do this, ultimatums, right? Manipulating your actions. If you don't do this, this form of verbal abuse is common at the end of a marriage. If your spouse doesn't want a divorce, they will say whatever. Oh, I read that part already. Sorry. Your self-esteem is in the gutter. The verbal abuser wants you to doubt yourself, your ability to make decisions, and your own opinion. Are you not in your right mind? Something is wrong with you. You're crazy. This, that, and the third. Okay. So, and what usually happens is it's progressive. Because if the person was, unless they're just like a high level narcissist, if the person was overtly abusive in the beginning, it's like, okay, the house is on fire. I'm not going to go in there. So of course they're going to kind of layer or put a facade on that. And then incrementally you might see bits and pieces of this type of personality leaking out until ultimately you get to a point where you're like, how did I get here again? You feel like you are walking on eggshells, which we spoke about that already. For those who just joined us, I am reading from an article and taking this opportunity to talk about signs, symptoms, and solutions for verbal abuse. So this particular segment is named Verbal Abuse for You. We see this in our community. We see it normalized. We see things like playing the dozens, see things like your mama jokes, see things like diss records. We see things, and we are people who, the more you're able to verbally box and joust with your opponent, it's the more cool points you get. It's the more accepted you are. It's the hotter you are as a rapper. You understand? And this is kind of the stuff that we, the people, historically have supported. The problem comes in because we think that is funny and cool. And I come from a culture where they don't even have to know you. You know what I'm saying? The first inclination is to classify the person by how they look. So for instance, it's not funny, but for instance, this is talking about intimate relationships. For instance, if someone cuts you off and you're driving, then one of your immediate inclinations would either to be call a person an idiot or a lunghead or a fool or all of these things, depending on how far you go into the colorful language, one would use to just to describe the displeasure. They don't necessarily personally know that person. So you have the person like that who will speak about strangers in this type of way and describe them. Then you have the person who brings it into the relationship and uses those disparaging terms and words to describe their displeasure with the person to hopefully get the person to go into the direction that they want them to, okay? This goes into, and all of that is wrong. If you have to manipulate the person to that degree, if you have to cow down the person, if you feel the need to then that is an unhealthy relationship, and either it needs to be reassessed or there needs to be some respectful distance between the individuals so that each of the parties there can take time to heal. Sometimes when you separate, it doesn't mean, oh, I'm gone forever. It may mean that that person needs to go through their purging and purification process before they can come back to the whole. It's kind of like being put out the camp when you're unclean. You understand? And you have to really do something wild and crazy to be totally cut off. But you can, if something comes upon you, then you can be put out the camp because you're nada or unclean. And if we look at these conditions and these things as spiritual uncleanness, then we would understand why some people need to separate for a time. And if they're stuck in whatever mode they're in and they don't want to grow and they don't want to elevate, at which point you have to leave them to do what it is they do. Okay? How to respond to verbal abuse in a relationship. Once again, sometimes we say relationship and we only think man and woman. When you go to work, you're in a relationship with your boss. You're in a relationship with your coworkers because you work in relation to them. Okay? When you're in your children, you are work in relation to them. with your parents or your siblings, you work in relation to them. So this is a relationship. And again, abuse can exist in all of these spaces. Okay. So that's for clarity for those who think that it's only talking about one type. Let me know how you're doing thus far. Put it in the box. I see a lot of people bust in and bust out because, again, why do you talk about stuff like this? You know, I talk about stuff like this because over the years, I wish I heard more stuff like this. Like, I'm the type of person who will watch the YouTube video with 10 views because I don't believe because something is popular that thing is true. Okay. Hold on 1 second because my thing, I thought I had plugged it in. I guess I didn't. Okay. Said bye to Facebook because it went out. Okay. So subscribe to the YouTube so you don't miss the good. I'm not a person who believes that because something is popular, it is true. I was born and raised not to adhere to that type of thought. So I'm the type of person who will go to the last page on a search engine. And if you look up what's this? If you look up some article I read some time ago, it's like people don't, when you're looking at how people search on the internet, and some people don't pass the third page on a search engine. Some people after that, if they don't see you immediately come up, then they're not going to go for it. But that doesn't mean just because it's not popular, doesn't mean it's not true. Because the majority of people are wrong the majority of the time. I say that to say if you are seeking truth, then you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to venture into places that it's perhaps less known. You understand? But I'm going to continue. How to respond to verbal abuse in a relationship. So I already established if you go to work, for example, and you have a boss, and that boss feels like because they are the boss in the work environment, they can talk to you as their subordinate. They could talk to you as though you're left on. They could talk to you as though you have no worth. That is abuse because they're your boss doesn't give them the right to speak to you. But this is what this world tells you, that their person is over you. So that gives them the right. One of the situations that come up, and I just saw a short clip of the exchange between Steve Harvey and Monique, and they're having this spirited exchange, and Steve Harvey essentially saying that money is his God, that's his deity, and integrity has nothing to do with it. And that's kind of the world that we live in, that you're going to take anything that somebody gives because that person is supposedly in a position that is higher than you. Now, respect is one thing, but abuse is something else, where that person feels like they can use you, they can discard you, they can malign you, they can do all these things, then that's abuse. So the boss, you walk into the job and the boss is like, yo, I need you to get this and I need you to get that. And then you're like, oh, it's my boss. I have to do it. And each time that person kind of picks at you and gnaws at you, like it says, you wither within. Your soul begins to crumple up. You walk on eggshells. That's not a healthy relationship, and that's not really a boss. That's not really a leader, because essentially that's what the boss is supposed to be. The boss is supposed to be a leader that shows you and encourages you to do your job, the portion of your job that you need to do, right? So if the fill in the blank person you are closest to habitually verbally abuses you and dismisses your feelings, you will begin to see yourself and needs as unimportant. And that's where you become this type of codependent personality where the needs and desires and wants of everyone else. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second, y'all. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. All right, I'm back. Hold on, because that was kind of abrupt. So I'm just going to share them this YouTube link, and then we're going to continue. These are the things we accept because Steve Harvey's, you need a paycheck, your children can't eat, integrity, you know, This type of conversation that this world makes you have to choose, then this is what they call selling your soul, right? You have to choose between your wellness, emotional wellness, spiritual wellness, and your physical needs. And that's the dangers a lot of times of this world and the things that this world privileges over something else. Yes, office politics. That exactly, Slapbox. Office politics, where you have to kind of, do what they say you need to do, because if not, then the consequence is you're going to be without job. And why do we really care? Because it means you're going to be without money and you're going to be without a home. So you take this type of abuse so that you can live. Okay, that is maladaptive. Okay, so how to respond to verbal abuse in a relationship. What happens is some people will either lash out and then they'll just be on the fringe of society, or you'll begin to internalize it and see your needs as unimportant or little consequences and irrelevant. When you finally recognize and come to terms with the idea that you are being verbally abused, you need to also become focused on getting help. Here are some tips you can take if faced with verbal abuse. So again, I'm reading for the article and I'm just filling in. I'll let you know parts I agree with, don't agree with, or personal experiences. Abuse is never justified. You should never feel that it is your fault and walk away when it happens. Do you hear that? Some people, the abuser, would love the individual to believe that the reason why I'm abusing you is because it's your fault. You know what I'm saying? When you hear this type of verbiage, when you hear this type of language, you need to keep in mind what you're hearing. You need to put your listening ears on. When you hear it's your fault, you made me do it, that means the individual is putting all of the onus on you for them abusing you. Then you need to pay attention. These are some signs that will help you to wake up. Some people are not strong enough to walk away when it happens. Some people are again torn. If you are being verbally abused by a coworker or your boss and you want to walk away, but what does walking away mean? Then we have this fear. And what does the abuser work off of? Fear. Let the abuser know how hurtful their words are and discuss them with them, the facts that it is unacceptable to you. Set boundaries on what you will and will not accept from your abuser. Now, this can go two ways. Just call it experience. Now, if the person, depends on what type of abuser this person is. If they are a covert abuser or overt abuser, if they're high-level narcissists or they're, whatever they are, whatever their personality disorder is going to determine the response you're going to get. Some people are kind of upset when they get a response because you're thinking, I'm here being open and honest with you. And why aren't you responding to me? Like, if you come to that abuser with that thought process, you're going to be upset because they're going to play on that, because the chances are if they're abusing you, then they have some fear and reservations in their closet and they have some maladaptive behaviors. Okay, so they're not really most times going to be like, oh, I wasn't aware that I was abusing you. Sometimes they're very aware. Okay. So you let them know. I would say that you let them know, because sometimes if you let them know how hurtful their words are, but you're not ready to walk away, what they're going to do is bring up that word every time and try to jam you with it. He says, it really hurts me when you call me, whatever, fill in the blank. And they be like, yeah, that really hurts you, huh? So you go down the lane and you're not ready to leave yet. So you think it's all good. And the minute you don't do something they want, boom, the word comes out. Boom, you're hurt again. Do you understand? So you kind of have to know where you are. But I do agree, set boundaries on what you will and will not accept from your abuser. This is something I just recently experienced, where when you set boundaries and others are not having the experience you're having, many can't understand why you need to set very firm boundaries. Not only do you need to set boundaries, you need to stand by them. And this is why you need to be ready to stand up for yourself when you do so, because when you set the boundary and you don't stand by it and the person transgresses the boundary, then it's like, okay, you're setting a boundary. This is kind of a war for your soul, okay? The abuser is like forward advancing on you, okay? And you're like, stop, I set a boundary. And they're like, what you gonna do? You back up. What you gonna do? You back up. They realize, oh, boom, you setting boundaries, but those are weak boundaries. I got the power. And they're gonna use that against you. So it really depends on the length of time the abuse has happened and occurred, who around you is permitting it or allowing it, who is actually doing the abuse. Is it a spouse? Is it a parent? Is it your teacher? Who? You know, all of these things, I would say, like, these bullet points are actually something that needs to be further explored. Seek counseling either together or separately. This is if the person is married, because this is kind of how it's written. Surround yourself with a support system of family and friends who will validate your feelings. Discuss with them what is happening and how you are feeling. And so, depends on the, like I said, depending. This all depends on many things. There's so many variables here that sometimes the abuser will isolate the victim to the point where they don't have their family and friends anymore, right? So this is considering that they are actually around, but sometimes that abuser may find themselves isolated and all alone, and that's something to consider as well. Let me drink some water. How y'all doing today? Hopefully you are enjoying the lesson. I'm gonna come and read the comments, so feel free to leave your comments in the comment section. I'll be back. All right. And let me know if you've experienced any such thing. What have you done about it? Are you the abuser? Because it's harder to say, you know, if you know what, I'm an abuser. You know what I'm saying? You know, what, I need help. You know, if that's the person, it's easier to say this person is an abuser or that person is an abuser, and not so easy to take a look in the mirror and realize that, you know what, you may be the abuser. Like, I'm very aware of energy and the change in energy. And even when I'm speaking to my children, sometimes they may get you to the point where you want to, and it just actually happened to me before I came on live. And I'm watching my daughter's body movements, and I'm watching her face, and I'm watching how she's absorbing the energy, and always very cognizant of this, but at the same time trying to bring her to be aware of her energy and the way she interacts with her siblings. Because this power struggle, which is exactly what it is, it starts from childhood. You know what I'm saying? How can I get this person to do what I want? Am I going to intimidate them? Am I going to manipulate them? Am I going to act like I'm, you know, all of these things. So I watch the different personalities in my household and how they try to get what they want out of each other or out of me. Like, for instance, for a while, I saw them trying to use, and actually caught them and had to nip it in the bud because I felt abused. Can I be honest, y'all? I thought they was abusing me because they would send a baby in as the decoy when they realized, and they would call it the cuteness, right? So I want to tell y'all my story of how the babies was abusing me. And they would call her the cuteness. And they would say, cuteness, you go in there and cute mommy up, and then she gonna give us what we want. So they'd be sitting by the door like this. So that's the manipulation tactics. And then the little baby come in and be like, mommy. And then she is so cute. So you be like, oh, you're so cute. What you want, little baby? And then she asks. And then as soon as I say yes, I hear this rejoicing at the door, like, yes. I was like, oh, they didn't use me, y'all. I was abused. I was emotionally abused. Anyway, I'm gonna continue. That's my little story. That's my little sharing. Let me drink some water on that. I mean, then I had to tell them that why that was wrong. So they kind of stopped that. I had to tell them why that was wrong. Where are we? If the verbal abuse escalates to physical abuse, leave. Because usually, not always, but there's a possibility that when verbal abuse is not enough, because remember, it's trying to manipulate the will of the other person. So this is the passive, kind of passive aggressive form. And when that's not working, then the person advances to physical confrontation. It says, if it escalates, leave. Your personal safety is far more important than the relationship, they're saying. Because once the physical abuse barrier has been broken, that's a whole nother story. We'll have to come back and talk about that. We'll have to come back and talk about it. Do not engage in conflict with your abuser. Sometimes people try to like, let's reason, Mr. Abuser or Miss Abuser. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, oh yeah, tell me. I have. So what did you say? And they'll act like you're listening. And because they're an abuser, everything you have said can and will be used against you. Okay? If your abuser becomes angry, stay calm. Walk away and don't give him and her what they want, a reaction from you. Walk away. Give it. What you doing putting that thing in here, boy? I can see a hand. Who's that? Hello. Oh, that's Day. Go sit down, Mama. I'm almost finished. I just see a little hand under my door. That was kind of scary. Hey, Shalom, tough guy. What's going on? I'm going to come to your question and comments, so feel free to leave it in the box. You know, we'll chop it up after this. But I had to get this one out there so that we can understand the signs, symptoms, and solutions of verbal abuse and identify when it happens and have the wherewithal to draw your boundary lines and say what is acceptable and not acceptable and stick with it. And a lot of times you're going to get this unleash of venom, depending on how level or high the level of toxicity in the person is. You're going to get why everyone else is tiptoeing around this individual, because this individual has broken people down to where they dare not. It's like that boss who's in the office and everybody is afraid of them and nobody wants to go in there because they don't want to have to deal with the dragon, right? And so the one person or two people, whoever comes in contact with the dragon and dares to upset them, has to deal with their wrath. And the people on the sidelines are like, I told you, you know what I'm saying? And the reality is that is coddling, or my new word for the week, mollycoddling that individual, and it's not doing any good for that abuser, and it's not being any good for those who allow themselves to be abused. So you kind of have to endure so that you can get back to a healthy balance. There are some people where I grew up, there's a saying that dopino will frighten, right? That the ghost or the apparition knows who's afraid of it. And so there's some people who do it to people who they can make afraid of them. And then so oftentimes you may see the bully on the playground carry on and take people lunch money and push people down. And then you have that one person like, yo, and I saw this video one time on Facebook, I think it was. And this bully was bothering the youth every day, every day, every day. Shalom, everybody who just joined us. The bully is bothering the youth. This one day, the dude came to class. He's like, yo, enough. This dude roll up. I'm doing what I'm thinking he's saying just by the way he dealt with this bully, right? So this bully be punking everybody in the class. I wish I could find that video again. This particular day, dude walked in with his backpack, minding his business. And the bully, you know what bullies do. I want to just push you. I want to see where you at. The dude turned around. They look like junior high schoolers. He unleashed, and I'm sorry, y'all. I ain't even going to front. I kind of rejoiced. He unleashed a butt whipping on this dude. I mean, he jumped on him. He started pummeling him. Apparently, this dude was beating him up and bullying him all the time. So much so till he landed so many hits on him that the bully started screaming out that he was being jumped because he thought it was more than one person tearing him up. And they finally got him off him, and he just said, I kept telling you to leave me alone. You know what I'm saying? And so oftentimes the bully wants to see who the bully can push over. And so the worst thing you can do for a bully is let them bully you. You have to draw your boundary in the sand and let them know, don't cross this. So if you're being verbally bullied, you have to find it in yourself to say, first of all, why am I allowing myself to be verbally bullied? Because the reality is, if you don't understand that, you will go to someone else and you will end up in that same type of cycle. Okay. Okay, do not engage in conflict with your abuser. So the whole bully story, they would be like, Amuna, you were wrong for telling the bully story. But I was talking about siblings in school. Like if the dude is way bigger than you, or whatever the case may be, or the person is crazy and deranged and may hurt you, then you really kind of got to pick your battle. That's why I say it's not black and white, child. You got to weigh out the options. I was just telling you about the bully dude in school. I'm just saying. If your abuser becomes angry, stay calm, walk away. That's if they're not weaponized. And don't give him or her what they want, a reaction from you. Now, again, what is a reaction? Slapbox say how you get jumped by one person. If I find that video, I gotta show it to you guys. The bully cried out. He thought it was 50 people on him, the way that dude just was like, brah, 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 brah. He was tearing him up, y'all. You see, take back your power. If you react to again, I was talking about reaction. Reaction is, again, like they call it, reactionary. And that's you giving the energy in response to what the bully is doing. So when the bully or the abuser tries to elicit a response out of you, and you give them the stone face, or you don't give them back the energy. Because remember, that's why the course about toxic people, for me, it took me to another level, and I made the course and shared it because I understood how people get energy. And so the bully or she is demanding the energy of you. Okay. And so when you realize that you draw the boundary in the sand and I'm not allowing you to take the energy from me, then it's no longer fun. There's nothing here. You get it? So you're no longer feeding them. Take back your power. If you react to the abuser, you are rewarding them. And this is true. Let them know they have no power over your emotions. No, it says you're rewarding them, letting them know they have power over your emotions. Don't allow the abuser to have control over how you feel. And this is talking about ruling your spirit. If you're reactionary, the person who can make you feel this and feel that controls you. And this is why they first try to get into your mind, so that they can control you without having to put physical force on you. And so we have to be aware of what we're giving up and what we're allowing when we don't learn to master ourselves. This just happened, where I had to tell my son, you're getting into, you're going back and forth with your siblings. You have the opportunity. You can't control what they do, but you have a room. You have books. Take yourself out of the situation and then gain control of yourself. When we lose control of ourselves, this is when somebody can say, aha, see, I got you mad. Oh, and then they'll begin to, as we read earlier, mock you, taunt you, do all kinds of things to make you feel lower than, to lower your self-esteem. So that are there we have some coping mechanisms, not coping mechanisms, some solutions, some signs. So we went over the signs. I'm gonna come to the comment section now. We went over the signs. We'll go over them, being called names, using words to shame, yelling, screaming, and swearing, using threats to intimidate, blaming the victim. Your feelings are being dismissed. You become saddened, manipulating your actions. Your self-esteem is in the gutter, so they break your self-esteem, and you become an eggshell walker, okay? And then we talked about those are some of the signs and the symptoms. And then we spoke about some of the solutions. So now we're going to come to the comment section, y'all. I'm saying, I'll be taking my real life experience from and bringing it to you, because, my real life experience, once I process it, because I have taken a lot of time to process my own pain, things don't stay as long as they would. You know what I'm saying? It's like, boom, it comes to you and you flush it out and you be like, oh, wow, okay, I know what that was. And you're able to identify quickly what that was, and then you'll be able to, boom, switch it and take it, and boom, now it's a lesson that I can share. You understand? And when I'm talking about in a manner of, you process it at first, you laugh, you mostly laugh. I think I'm at the point now where I don't take it that seriously, that I kind of laugh, but then again, it's not funny, and then you're like, what? Because, that's how I raise my vibration, with laughter. But y'all want to know, this light is hot. This YouTube light is hot, y'all. That joint got me sweating like I'm in a pulpit. Hold on. Whew. I can't even eat no more of my soup. It's making me hot, y'all. Okay. Okay, we're going to come to Slapbox's Gucci thing. Slapbox says, you off topic. Thank you for letting you brought up road rage, and the video of the Gucci thing had me focusing on controlling things that trigger me, like some random person flipping me the and yes, it depends on where you're living. Like the Amuna who drives in New York, which New York driving is the worst, is not the Amuna who drives in Brooklyn. I mean, not the Amuna who drives in Florida. When you drive, for some reason, when I drive, I don't say other people, I don't necessarily get road rage, but you do, depending on where you are, have these expectations that the other drivers, but that's life too, right, are not necessarily meeting. So I'm not the flick bird person. So I don't really get a lot of birds flicked at me, but sometimes you do get dirty looks. Like here in Florida, you'll have a lot of people who, elderly, because it's a retirement state, who just drive like they ain't going nowhere. or the person who's on their navigation, you know what I'm saying, going 20 miles an hour down the road. And you're like, what are you doing? But I don't think I have road rage. Even when I was driving New York, I think I become more aggressive. Like when we're driving in New York, I have to tell my husband, like, yo, just let, because he drives like he's in the suburbs in New York. I'm like, you can't drive like that in New York. In New York, you have to drive like I'm taking that. Because in New York, they don't give you really room to, like, can I get over? Like here, I'm still often shocked when I, like, I wind down my window and I'll be like, yo, can I get over? And they'll be like, hey, sure, no problem. So yeah, like you said, you control the trigger. Um, I don't get a lot of birds flicked at me, but I definitely understand you. When you say that different things trigger me, I would say one thing that I work on is how people approach me about my children. And it triggers me a little bit. I've gotten better because it happens so frequently, but they often approach me like I'm obligated them to tell them all my business. You know what I'm saying? And it's usually older European people. They'll first start, gravitating towards me and they want to start asking me all of these questions. And that kind of triggers me sometimes. And then I look at my children and I'm like, I don't want to chill. And there was only about, like, I would say 2 times that I can remember down here that I actually wanted to roll on somebody. Because the dude said the most rudest thing ever. I don't even want to go into it because I'm going to go, of course. Maybe I will, because I think I was verbally abused by this dude in Walmart. Y'all remind me to tell y'all the story after I looked at these questions. I was verbally accosted by this old man with a ponytail in Walmart, y'all. Anyway, so I was triggered, but then I caught myself. He says, I feel uncomfortable telling someone talking crazy how I internalize it. I'd rather just say, respect me and I respect you. All that extra stuff is unnecessary. Men usually respect that. Extra stuff is cussing and yelling. Yeah. The extra stuff is cursing, yelling, degrading, name calling. That's the extra stuff that shows the person that they don't respect themselves and they don't respect you. And so that's why I said, depending on the article is saying, tell them how you feel. You tell them how you feel. You be mad when they laugh you to scorn and continue to do it. So you really have to be careful of the type of abuser you're dealing with, because you may just get yourself more frustrated. So I'll agree with that. I can't say the first thing, so I'll say astonished. Is that okay? How to deal with a job not disclosing the potential health risk while working. Oh, so the job didn't tell you that, like, say for instance, if you're in a coal mine or you're working with some chemical that may get in your lungs, is that what you're talking about? Let me know if that's what you're talking about, astonished. And then I can get a better picture. Because that's what I'm thinking of. If the job knows that you're dealing with some type of hazardous things, like for instance, the guy who won the money suit the other day from Monsanto, because he was working with this deadly poisonous thing that gave him terminal cancer, if I'm not mistaken, or something. Let me see, because I don't even want to tell a lie on that. What was he? I believe he was a gardener. Let me see here. Y'all know I like doing on-the-spot research. Hold up. Man wins lawsuit against Monsanto. There it goes. I think I saw it. Yeah, here he goes. Roundup. Jury awards terminally ill man $289 million in lawsuit against Monsanto. So he gets terminal illness and he's working on a job that required him to use this product. And so it really depends on, you go to HR. You go to HR and they're supposed to be human resources, and respectfully go to them and raise your concern. Because one of the things we often don't do, and I see a lot of other people do, nations. And I used to work in a car dealership one time when I was in New York, and I just listened to how we react to things as opposed to others react to things. And at this point, I haven't mentioned slavery all night, so I'm gonna go ahead and introduce slavery. Historically, we are the abused. We have been verbally abused, physically abused. This is my thesis that I keep building, right? My hypothesis. And because of that, when we read the signs and symptoms of this verbal abuse, we feel as though our voice is not being heard. We internalize the issue, right? And our self-esteem is low. So when you go, I said it to say, other people and other nationalities, I see them. If they are, not all, but the ones I have experienced, if they are not content with something, They're going to write. They're going to complain. They're going to make a record of it. We, on the other hand, might turn to our coworker who can't do spit for us, be like, can you believe what they got us up in here doing? You understand what I'm saying? And so in this situation, if it is something potentially dangerous, I would say put it on record. Number one, put it on record. Bring it to the attention of the people that, listen, this thing potentially dangerous? You didn't disclose it, and get this paper trail going just in case. Just in case. I'm just saying, just in case. You need a paper trail. If that's not, well, get the paper trail regardless, because you're going to need that. If that's not working and they're not respectful and HR is not helping, then the possibility is that one may need to look for another place of employment. But at the same time, you want to make sure that nothing happens or happened to you because of your time there, and at which time all of the receipts, as they say in these YouTube streets, all of the receipts that you have is going to be necessary if and when perhaps you have to bring a case. So I would say get them receipts. Because if they knew it, then you need to get them either confessing or being honest about the fact that they knew that this was potentially an issue. LMO depends on how much you value the job. I worked at a place where I was taking care of a disabled dude who had, hepatitis, and they never told me. I complained and they didn't care. I left. And that's what's, yeah. And this is what I'm saying. It depends on the job. HR, if they're listening, put it on record. Let it be known. Don't just take it. We need to take more of a control, even though it may not seem like it's going to pan out, but you kind of always want to just put things on record, so they could never say, that never happened, and they knew, whatever the case may be. That's some type of violation, not telling you that somebody has hepatitis and have you interacting with the individual on the job. Rakita says narcissistic. And we're going to talk about narcissistic personality disorder. I talked about it years ago. I think it's important to come back and speak about narcissistic personality disorder. And the reason being, they claim that we, the people, go through a stage of narcissism as a child, where the world revolves around us. And if we have parents who feed us and pump us up and tell us we the jump, okay, that's what they used to say down south when I was younger, the jump, you know what I'm saying? So we have this phase of growth that is centered around the me, which is what narcissism is stuck on. The issue happens when the narcissistic phase extends beyond its shelf life. And so it goes into the next stage where you're supposed to be coming outside of yourself and looking at the health and well-being of not only yourself, but the people in and around you. Now, someone may have narcissistic characteristics, but that person may not necessarily be a narcissist. According to, and I put it out the other day, according to the DSM-4, like, I'm not no doctor, but I like minding their business, you know what I mean? There are certain checklists that you have to, or criteria that you have to check off all the way. Because when they go do their evaluations, they have their little criteria that says if you check off in all of these areas, then you can be labeled as the narcissist or narcissistic personality disorder or malignant narcissist or all of these things. Sometimes some of these issues or some of these characteristics, like, they cross over. And sometimes the person may not be a narcissist and it may present itself like narcissism, and it may be something else, like manic depressive or bipolar or all the other lovely names that they have come for to talk about the wild, crazy things that goes on in the minds of people. So we'll come back and talk about that. Some people are so emotional that they forget to be logical. And uncompromised mind, yeah, that's the imbalance. That's where the breathing come in, step back come in, the ability to see yourself, right? Sometimes we get overly emotional because we are fearful of people being hypercritical of us because of that low self-esteem. Remember, somebody who's been abused either goes on to allow abuse or goes on to become the abuser, unless they dealt with the abuse that they first endured. Okay? So that abuse, person who's been abused has already internalized their abuse. So they already have a low self-esteem. That's why they go about abusing others. You see what I'm saying? And so sometimes they become, not all, because some could just be cold and disconnected, But for those who are hypersensitive, it's like you have gotten a bruise or cut in an area repeatedly, and now you're afraid of anybody touching it. So if somebody comes close to you and you guarding and you're blocking and you're always on alert because you don't want to be re-injured. Because to tell you the truth, you know what I'm saying? It hurts. So who wants to constantly being hurt on purpose? You see? And so because they have been accustomed to people hurting them, then they become hypersensitive. Any type of critique is seen as you're coming for me, because the soul of the person is not built enough, is not whole enough to be able to endure that critique. It's like a building. If you have this little, you know what I mean, Jackie building that you put with your little two rusty nails, if a breeze blow, that building is going to fall down because the structure of the building is not strong enough to withstand the wind. Okay? That was that. Okay, those are my two thoughts. Uh, there was a dude. That's not why this is funny. Hold on, he gone back to road rage. You're funny, you made me laugh. Let me see the road rage now. No, I'm gonna read the road rage comment. There was a dude driving aggressive yesterday, and I emerged in front of him, not cut off, and he pulled up alongside me, and I didn't look, and he pulled in front of me and slammed on the. Oh no, that could see now that person is crazy. That person is crazy because that person is so crazy that that individual automatically assumes that this is what you did. And now the person like wants to get the individual back so much that they're willing to hurt themselves and the person, right? So the person, I don't automatically assume somebody cut me off. Like in this day and age, right? You pull up to the stoplight, I be looking over into people's car. And sometimes I get caught doing the foolishness where you may pick up the phone. So before it used to be at the stoplight and you're chilling at the stoplight or you're listening to music. Now people be at the stoplight looking on the phone, scrolling. I don't text, right? But they, you know, you're not, your attentions are not there. So sometimes when I see somebody driving a little suspect, I kind of observe what it is they're doing. And I personally, because I got precious cargo in the car, I personally just fall back. Like if the person is all over the road, I'm not road raging with them. It's not worth it. You know what I'm saying? So I just fall back and let them go. But it really depends on the individual and where you are. Like I said, some places have more road rage than others. I'm around a lot of older people, so there's really not that much. They just are the ones who make you want to have road rage. Yeah, so those are all the comments that we have. I want to show them and thank everybody for joining us. For those who joined us, I know we ended on road rage, but again, some people can have be verbally abusive through road rage. Like they're just angry. Like there's some people who you can't pay me to get in the car. Like after that first, second time, I'm like, yo, why you driving? Like you want to get out of here. Like you know what I'm saying? Why are you driving? It's not that serious. Like why are you going 50 miles an hour to a red light? It's red. And those type of crazy people, I'll be like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to ride with you. But yeah, verbal abuse for those who just joined us. Signs, symptoms, and solutions. Check yourself. See if you're the one. See if you like to say nasty and inappropriate things so that the person, see if you like to get a rise out of people because of that, because there might be a little bit of, you know what I'm saying? A little something in there. Just a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Just a little bit. And you may need to flush yourself out, which will be called a detox. So I put in the link box below the Flushing Out Toxic People course to bring more awareness and personal responsibility to the situation. You know, 9 days, I think it's 9 days. 9 days. You know, it's self-paced, so you can take as long as you want. But if you have any more questions or comments, feel free to ask. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. They have been very quiet, so now I'm about to check on them. And I'll come back. I think the next conversation, I didn't come back with the book yet because I'm not hearing, you know how they used to do when wrestling? I'm not hearing y'all vibing with my homegirl over here. I don't know why y'all dissing her. Where did she go anyway? Where Ann Moody went? Why y'all dissing the life of Ann Moody? Where did Ann Moody go? I don't know where Ann Moody went, y'all. Wait a minute. I don't know where she went. I gotta go look. Maybe one of the babies moved her. But anywho, Let me know if y'all want to continue with Ann Moody, and we can get that popping as well. But I will come back and touch on some of the more of the things that I've experienced this crazy week. Hope my thing didn't break. And I'm going to finish eating some more of my cold lentil soup for the soul, y'all. Cold lentil soup for the soul. So with that said, talk to you soon. Oh no. Oh yeah. Sometimes the children can be scared. Yeah, it was time. Her whole childhood is intense. Her whole childhood is intense. Like, her whole childhood is like, yo, lady, you probably needed 10, like 20 years of therapy. Like what she went through in her childhood. That's what I'm saying. We don't know what our parents and grandparents and why they ended up the way they were, what they saw in childhood, and the fact that they kept that with them for umpteen years and they were never able to process their own healing. And so they just passed it on to us. When I'm looking back, now I can be like, oh, wow, that's what that was. Okay, now I see. Now you have the responsibility of children. You have the responsibility of life, and you just keep going. It's like, bag lady, you going to break your back kind of stuff for the man and the woman. And so if we see people through that light, not permissive for dirty behavior, but I guess we'll be a little bit more understanding of why you probably need to cut them jokers off. Now I'm playing. No, for real, you might need to cut them jokers off so they get their mind back. What's this? I don't know what that is. What's that on the screen? Anywho. Oh, that's what that is. Okay. All right, everybody. I was tripping. It was the thing that was on the screen. All right, we'll talk soon. We're going to come back and talk about, should I tell y'all now? I'm just surprised, y'all. I'm going to see y'all later. All right, one.